We've been in a wonderful study on the book of Nehemiah, going through the entire book. We don't do this often, go through the entire book, but this has been a great, kind of deepens our understanding of the Bible in a certain area. Some of you may have never even heard of Nehemiah before this passage, and so it's been neat to kind of go through it. But Nehemiah was this amazing, amazing leader that traveled many, many miles to go back to Jerusalem to rebuild the wall. And what had not been done in 80 years previous, with 2 attempts, Nehemiah, he orchestrates the direction of rebuilding the wall, and the wall was rebuilt in 52 days. Now, folks, that is an amazing, amazing miracle of God, through where God used a leader to do great, mighty things. And today we're going to look at Nehemiah 6 and 15. He said, so the wall was completed on the 25th day of Elul, which read, I have two, I think about that, and I think about, okay, he did it. I mean, he did it. He actually built the wall in 52 days. We're at this point in the book of Nehemiah, we're at about chapter 6. How would you like, you're writing a book about your life history, and you're getting to chapter 6 and you're done. You're done. You finished. You've got the wall built in 52 days. Now, what do you do for an encore for that? And you'll find that that's not where Nehemiah stopped in the book. And we want to see what Nehemiah did after he built the wall and why it was important. Why was it so important? One of the things, if we're not careful, we can make great gains in life. But if we're not careful, we can also lose those gains. We can lose what we worked for so diligently. Nehemiah, he's telling us how leaders maintain their successes. I say, we don't have success unless we have successors. One day I'll move off the scene, somebody else will be up here. Now, this is not my church, it's really not your church, it's God's church. And God uses us, and He will use us and help to build and reach people for Jesus Christ, and then He'll have other people reach people for Jesus Christ. But we see in this book, as we get to chapter 7 of Nehemiah, that this book is divided in 2 separate sections, and chapter 7 is where it's divided. There are 2 phases in Nehemiah's life. Number 1, the construction phase. That's when he built the wall in 52 days. And then number 2 is the consolidation phase. Chapters 1 through 6 is the construction of the wall. And chapters 7 through 13 is the consolidation of the city. These are 2 very distinct phases. Nehemiah has to shift hats. He has to change his focus. He has to change his role. What you do in construction is different than what you have to do in consolidation. 2 different roles, 2 different ways. We're going to look today at one of the main reasons businesses go bankrupt, and why churches never grow, and why organizations fail. It's what I call it the transitional problem. The transitional problem is this: the leaders do not know how to grow with the organization. When they don't have the skills to go to the next phase, it gets strangled. Often the very people who started the church, the business, the organization, strangle it to death if they don't learn these skills. I was thinking about how our early beginnings, and we met in different little buildings, and we met at the TAD Center, and we had a little bitty, real small sound system board like this. When we had that old sound system, I could even run it, folks. It was basically loud or not loud. It was, like 3 mics or 4 mics, and then loud, not loud, and, red is you and blue is her, and very simple. Well, of course, as we grew, having to accommodate more mics and had the micro drums and bigger systems and bigger, that board back there now is huge, and there's all these different things, and I don't even know where to start. And there's some buttons that's sending the signal through the internet, and it's giving the right sound for the internet. And other buttons are sending it to for recording purposes. Others are sending it up here to these speakers up here where they can hear what they need to hear. And some are going out there where you. But what I'm saying, you would think, well, whoever started off getting to run the system when we first started, we are to be loyal to those people, and they should be the ones still running the sound system today. Only problem with that is, unless you can grow or take classes or keep learning and on that learning curve, eventually everything outgrows all of us. And we either learn to grow with the organization, or we go, God, you used me for that period of time for that, and now it's time for me to step over and let somebody else that knows more buttons than I do to run it. And life is like that. In any organization, any organization that does not realize that, whether it be in the leadership or whether it be in the laity, if they don't realize that, the church is just doomed to fail. There's two different types of leadership. There's the catalyst. They get things going. That's type 1. Type 2 is the consolidator. They keep things going after they're already going. Type 1 is the designer. They design it. They get the vision, the direction for it. Then type 2 is the developer. They'll take that vision and develop it. And then, they take it further. Type 1 is the motivator. They motivate a group of people to get together. Usually you start with nothing and you got plenty of it. I remember as at the TAD Center, we had to set up and tear down we didn't have a building. So I had to think, well, how can we have church? We don't have a building, so we just had chairs and we'd set them up and tear them down every week for 7 years. And all the sound system, the pianos, everything had to be done and I had to keep motivating people, hey, come on, one of these days we're going to have a building. We're not going to have to do this anymore. Well, I am so glad we've got such a wonderful church that as that eventually happened, there were some people that said, hey, I'm just this humble. I'm going to let somebody else start setting up chairs from now on. I'm going to let somebody else do this or that or the other. But it takes different skills, sets of skills to do different things. Type 2 leaders are more of the managers. They manage stuff. They keep managing it. They keep things going. They know how to run things. They make things run smoothly. Type 1 are the entrepreneurs. Type 2 are they just keep things going. They manage, they do all this stuff, and they're good at it. And you see, the entrepreneur must become the executive. The roles begin to change. The executive works through others. They don't do all of it themselves. They work through others. There was a time in the church we didn't have a church office, and I was the pastor, I was the secretary, I had several titles. I just all how, and I made the bulletin, and I played the piano, and Sandy led the worship, and I was really glad to pass on playing the piano to somebody else, and the congregation was even more happy. But the thing is, I had to do everything that we didn't have somebody else to do. And that's just the way things go sometimes. And we find this in the New Testament. The Apostle Paul was this great cleric, charging leader. He could go in and he'd get people together and say, we're going to build a church over here. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And, he was kind of a hard-nosed type guy. One time he sent John Mark on. He said, you go home, John Mark. You ain't worth your salt. He told John Mark went home all sad and upset. And Barnabas, patted him on the back and said, oh, Paul didn't mean it. Paul didn't mean to be that strict on you and all that. You just got to understand, Paul's trying to get stuff done. That's his temperament that God gave him, and that's what he's doing. And so Barnabas was this consoler, and he consoled John Mark. John Mark wrote the book of Mark. So we needed him too, but we need people like Paul, and we need people like Barnabas, and we need people like Timothy and Titus and Epaphroditus. And so you see that Paul was this type 1 leader, and then later on you find that Timothy and Titus and Epaphroditus is type 2 leaders. They're managers. They manage what Paul had started. And we find in the Jerusalem Bible, it said, the reason I left you behind in Crete was for you to get everything organized there. Paul realized that Timothy and Crete and Epaphroditus had great organizational skills. In the Good News version, it said to put in order the things that still needed doing. See, a wise leader knows that he is what he is and what he can do, and he compensates for what he can't do by getting the right staff people that can do it. It's very rare to find a leader that can do type 1 administration and type 2, but Nehemiah was such a man. Nehemiah was such a man, so led of God, that he could be that catalyst and the consolidator. He could be the motivator and the manager. He could be the entrepreneur and the executive. Nehemiah was a wonderful, powerful leader of God. In chapter 6, Nehemiah demonstrates 3 separate tasks of management. 3 different ways he manages. They are essential for consolidating growth. Most churches, I'm going to tell you this, 90 to 95% of all churches will never get past about 200. 90 to 95 churches in America will never get past about 200. Somewhere between 200 and 300. You know why? Because when a church grows beyond that 200 to 300 mark, everything has to start shifting and everything has to start changing. You would get to a point that the main leaders cannot do it all themselves. And so we're in that shift right now at this church. We went through it one time when we added 2 services. We have an early service and we have this service. And so we had some leaders. They had to, okay, we've got to have more greeters. We've got to have greeters for the first service, greeters for the second service. We've got to have, our welcoming and donut and fellowship and hospitality ministry there. That has to have first service, second service. Now we're adding a third service and we're having to have more. And more nursery, more children, more youth, more everything. More worship teams. This feels awkward to some because we had this one huge worship team here a few months ago. And, next week the entire worship team is going to be back up here. There'll be about 20 people up here. But see, we can't really expect 20 people to be here every Saturday night, every early Sunday morning, if we add 5 services. So we come to a point that we have to multiply and we have different leaders of different worship teams. How many has enjoyed this thus far? Amen. It's been different. It's probably been most challenging on like the great people up here in the sound room because different people have different adjustments. It's probably been real challenging on Tim as he's trying to help coordinate all this. It's probably been real challenging on the singers. Some singers say, well, I'd love to sing every single week, and they're not getting to sing every week. But I'm telling you, we have to learn to see something work through other people. That's the key to a church going beyond that 200 to 300. There's over 30,000 people in Cumberland County that don't go to church, folks. And for us to do that, we are now fixing to oversee a church in Chattanooga. They're going to project our service on their screen. And for the first time, I'm going to be forced to work absolutely through someone else. I'm working through their secretary down there. I'm working through their staff down there. I'm saying, well, you need to have this done. You need to have that done. We talked on the phone this week for hours and trying to coordinate. It's very awkward for me because I don't know that that's my real strong point. I'm trying to learn that because I want to grow with this church and be with this church as long as I can. But it takes growth. It takes me growing. It's taking me reading and studying and trying to figure out how to go. But the higher you get up on that kind of the pyramid of growth, the less freedom you have. The less freedom you have. You don't have as much freedom. You don't have as much time. You have to work through other people. How many has tried to work through other people before and you go, just get out of the way and let me do it? You know why? Because it's easier for you to just go ahead and do it than it is for you to work through somebody else to do it. But I'm going to tell you, if you are the only one that can work through it, if you're the only one that can do it, then you're never going to be any bigger in your business, in your family, in your organization, whatever you're in. How do you maintain what you've already got, you've already gained? Here's 3 things that Nehemiah knew and he did. First thing he did is he recruited leadership. It's been a challenge for all our different departments to recruit leadership, but they're doing it. They're recruiting more greeters, more hospitality and donut and all this coffee ministry. They're recruiting more children's leaders, more youth leaders. It's a strain. You have to look for the right leaders. You've got to make sure they're of the right quality. But that was one thing, recruit leadership. That's what he did. You recruit them, you enlist them, you train them, you delegate, and you get other people involved. Can you imagine how many more people we're going to have involved in Grace Community Church because we're adding another service? It's just great to see that many more people involved. Number 2, Nehemiah recorded the progress. You've got to record the progress. Keep good records of your resources. And number 3, you've got to raise support. You've got to find the funds to pay for the ongoing operation. Let's look at this. Recruit more leaders. After the wall had been rebuilt, and had set the doors in place, and the gatekeepers and the singers and the Levites were appointed, here's the first thing that Nehemiah does. After he gets the wall built and he puts the doors in, he appoints gatekeepers. Now, what's a gatekeeper? These are like the guards, the watchmen, the police of the city. Later in the chapter, we find that there were 138 people appointed to keep the peace in that city. Folks, that's smart. We need some peacekeepers that, as you're going through the transitions of life, they're not a part of the problem, they're part of the solution. They're peacekeepers. They keep the peace. They say, let's work this thing out. Let's work it together. And they had these people. They were watching. You don't build something just to see the enemy come in and tear it up and destroy it. And so he appointed 138 gatekeepers. Then he appointed singers. These were worship leaders. You have civic functions. You're going to have some worship leaders, and they were going to keep up the morale, the spiritual morale of the city, and it was going to be a great place to live, and there's going to be different little festivals to go to, and it was going to be talking about God and country and all this kind of thing, and it was a great thing that he was doing to keep up the morale. How many knows if you don't keep your morale up, it will go down? You ever notice how things are like that? Did you know you can mow your yard and it'll have to be mowed again? You ever clean the field off before, a complete field, and you go, okay, we got all the trees down, got all the roots out. Now look at that beautiful field. It's going to be like that forever. No, it won't. You go move to Florida and come back in 10 years and there'll be trees there and it'll be a jungle again. Why? Because, birds eat and then they dropping here and there and then trees start growing, and before you know it, I thought I cleaned that off. You did. But see, it's kind of like the curse of man. Everything keeps reverting. Have you noticed if you don't take care of your health, it just runs down? Have you noticed that about everything? It's a constant challenge in this world we're in to keep anything up. I painted my deck on my house about a year ago, or 2 years ago now. I've got to repaint it this year. Nothing stays the same, and it's always deteriorating. And you have to keep branching out. We've got to go forward. While we're going further with this church, we've got to maintain what we've already kept, what we've already got. So he had singers. The morale has to be up. Then he appointed Levites. These were to assist the priests. And here's the thing: he appointed Hananiah as commander of the citadel. They were like the mayor of the city. Did you know, the point here is, he knew no organization can ever stabilize if it's built on one person. The church, a business, government cannot stabilize if it's only built on one person. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the entrepreneur, the executive. At the beginning, Nehemiah was that entrepreneur. He was that executor. But now he has to work through other people to maintain what they had accomplished. Nehemiah had built the wall, but now was he going to maintain the city? Was he going to maintain the peace? Was he going to keep the people together? So what he began to do, he had a strategy for maintaining what he had gained. And one thing he did, he began to look for, to recruit leadership. I'm going to tell you something. What do you look for when you're looking for leaders in any kind of business, in anything that you're a part of? The first thing that Nehemiah looked for was, number one, is integrity. You've got to have somebody that you can trust, somebody that you can believe in, somebody that their walk is their talk and their walk matches. They have integrity. And so, here's the thing, when you start growing at the church and you start adding new leadership, you want to make sure as you put new leadership into place, that these leaders have integrity. That they're truthful, that they're honest, that there can be, that kind of quality. You need a lot of different people, but you just don't put anybody in. You have to have integrity. And so that, he said, he put these people in, and you'll find there, he said, because he was a man of integrity. God's looking for people that He can trust. God's looking for people that are honest. God's looking for people that have integrity to put in place. The next thing that Nehemiah did is he's thinking about, who do I need? I've got a lot of people to appoint. I've got a lot of people to put in different places. The next thing he looked for was godliness. Godliness. He was a man of integrity, and he feared God more than most men do. What does the fear of God mean? He reverenced God. He reverenced God. I don't want to do anything that's unpleasing to God. Nothing. I don't want to do anything that's unpleasing to God. He lived a godly life. You know, and as you kind of climb that pyramid of success, of leadership, the higher you go, the less freedom you have. The more godly you must be. The more integrity you must display. You know, we've been a church that we just accept anybody. You can come, wear what you want to wear. Yeah, you don't have, there's no standard to get in here. You can be whoever you want to be and from wherever you want to be. And, you know, we're not so much about your past, we're about where you're going, you know. But when it comes to leadership, folks, we're going to have people that's got integrity. We have to have people that are godly people. That are people that will be examples. And you know, go, well, you know, I wouldn't want to be a leader, but you know, if you got to do that, I don't want to be no leader. I don't want to be no example. You know, integrity and godliness, that stuff, you know, that's not for me. Well, it may not be for you. God may want you to be a leader, but you're not willing to take the restraints that there is in leadership, because there's always restraints in leadership. I told you about Billy Graham last week, that as he began to be known, you know, at one time he was just a guy like anybody else, and he can go anywhere he wants and do anything he wants, and then he become a national figure of a man of God. Still human. I don't care who your minister is, they're still human. They still have failures. But not only did Billy Graham know that he had to be an example to the people that he would speak to, but he also knew that a lot of people would be watching him. And he got to the point that he would not travel anywhere without taking someone with him. He said, what if I'm in a motel somewhere and some woman kind of leans against me and the door opens, somebody takes a picture, and they said, you know, I was doing this or that to this woman. So he made a decision that he would never travel anywhere by himself. That's restraining. That's not as fun as it used to be, but there is a cost to leadership. And part of the cost of leadership is integrity and godliness. And Nehemiah knew this. The next thing that Nehemiah did, and I don't know that these would be in absolute order, but the next was faithfulness. You know, how faithful was the people. The city couldn't be at peace. The city couldn't go to sleep at night if they wasn't sure, well, you know, the gatekeeper, you know, they're supposed to be there and shut that gate at about sundown, and they're to lock the gate and to keep out the enemy. But what if you woke up one night and you looked over and the gate of the city had been left open? You go, well, I can't sleep anymore at night. I don't feel secure. I don't feel safe anymore. And because somebody didn't do their job. And so leadership requires faithfulness. You have to be here. You have to have a backup. And when you're not here, your backup's got to be here. And that backup's got to have a backup. And they're not there. But faithfulness is, I'll either be there or I'll make sure somebody else is there. I can tell you there's a lot of times I had preached sick because at that time I didn't have anybody to fill in for me. I know some of you have done your job at this church before sick because you're faithful and you would not leave your post uncared for. And you didn't really feel like getting up that morning. How many just really enjoyed getting up an hour earlier this morning? It just really was fun. I could have slept in today, I'm going to tell you the truth. Even in 1 Timothy 3:10, he talks about the qualifications of a deacon. Well, you know, there was a time in the early church they didn't have deacons. They didn't even know what deacons were. Deacons was just a servant. Just a servant. That's what deacon means. You serve people. But they had this problem, and what arose is there were some widows in the church, and the widows were not being taken care of. And the early church said, well, we need to take care of these widows. So they go, well, we need to appoint some servants that would be, their job would be make sure that the widows are taken care of. And you know what happened? They appointed these people called deacons, or servants, but the word there was deacon. And did you know that back then, I'll just break this into y'all, but back then they were actually deaconess? Those were not deacons' wives, they were women servants of God. that were doing ministry for God. They were called deaconess. You can go and look back in the original language and actually see that there yourself. But these deacons and deaconess began to take care of the needs of the widows in that day. And you see, there were qualifications, though, for people. You go, well, I didn't think this church was I didn't think this was one of those kind of churches where you have to match up. I thought this was a church that just loved everybody. Well, we do love everybody, but see, there is qualification to leadership. You find it all the way through the Word of God. Matthew 25 and 23, he talks about, well done, thou good and faithful servant. There's the word faithful. You were faithful in little things, and you will be given much more responsibility. The people that learn faithfulness here in the world to come will also be used for God in even greater ways. The Apostle Paul in 2 Timothy 2 and 2, as he was explaining to these, as he had started church, he put Timothy over one and Titus and these others, and he said, well done, he tells them, he said, and the things you have heard me say, entrust to reliable men who will also be qualified to teach others. There's one translation said this, he said, Paul said, Timothy, teach faithful men who shall be able. See, the qualification of leadership, of faithfulness, always comes before ableness comes. It always comes. You know, there's a lot of things in this church we can train you to do, but we will not waste the time training you to do it if you're not faithful. It just makes sense. Why would you train somebody to be the gatekeeper in a city and then they don't show up half the time? So faithfulness is a very high quality. And Paul told Timothy, he said, Timothy, find faithful men who shall be able. You know, if they're faithful and they'll come and they'll take training and they'll show up, they can be trained and they'll be used greatly for God. There's a lot of passages here. I won't read them all. They're in your notes today. But the second thing that Nehemiah did is he recorded their progress. Some of you know I had this surgery and I've lost a bunch of weight, and I had to go Monday actually. But one of the things they said the biggest downfall to weight loss is you get where when you first start off. How many of you remember when you first start off, you write down everything you eat? Okay, I drank some water. I drank some more water, and I drank some more water, and I eat that, and I eat that. They said the biggest reason people go back and gain their weight back is they started off doing all the right things. They recorded when they exercised, and they recorded when they ate, and they recorded this, and they recorded that, and they had a weekly weigh-in, and they did all of that stuff. Well, what happens though, a lot of people, they'll get to their goal weight. I met my goal weight, buy me some new clothes. And I'm through with all of that stuff. They said the number one reason people revert back to gaining all their weight is they quit keeping record. They stop. I've arrived. The most dangerous place in most of our lives is when we think we've arrived. There is that constant need to keep evaluating everything we do. You know, when you get a church and it just grows to a certain point, it gets 2 or 3. Say if the church was actually 500 strong every single week. And we're somewhere around that with all our services and stuff. But if we ran 400 strong every single week, and we go, well, that's what we hope to do. We're one of the bigger churches in the city, and that's all we need to do. Folks, I'm going to tell you, within 2 or 3 years, we'd be back down to 200. Why? Because people move, people grow older and they pass away, people get mad and leave, people, they grow to a certain place, they need a different type church. All those reasons are valuable reasons why people move on, they get different jobs, all that. But what happened, anytime we get to a point that we feel like we've arrived and we don't keep challenging ourselves to go to the next level, we plateau, and then once you plateau, you start losing. And then you get to the point you don't have the ministry, and you don't have the people, and you can't reach people like you want to, because nothing stays the same. And so you need to record the progress. You need to daily challenge yourself. You need to keep, whatever got you there, you're going to need that and so much more to keep you there. It's important every single day in your life. It's important. It's important to look at my watch. But I want to tell you something. God is doing a great thing here. And I want God to continue to do that. But you find that Nehemiah, the next thing, he raised the necessary finances to support the work. He kept it going. He kept moving it forward. And it takes all of that. One thing that you find here is Nehemiah, the first thing he required of his leadership is they set the example. If they were raising funds, he expected the leaders to set the example in giving. And then the second thing he did is he had heads of families gave their gifts. And then third, everybody else gave what they had. See, it never was equal giving because everybody's so different, but it was equal sacrifice. The great thing that I found, we had, I'll just tell you who it is. I was talking about you, Robin, in the first service, Robbie. In the first service, she had said, Dennis, because of my work and this, that, and the other, I want to work in this church, but there's certain months I can do it, there's certain months I can't. I really, really appreciated that because there's somebody going to give what they have, and what she had was 3 or 4 months out of the year that she could really dedicate, and then there's other times that she just couldn't do that. And there's some people, they're saying, hey, I can do first service, I can't do second service, or I can do Saturday night, or I can do this. And some people go, hey, I'll be in the worship team, but I can only do it ever so often. We're going to go for it. That's what we want. Everybody giving something. And here's what you found here. You had he said, leaders, I want you to step up to the plate, and I want you to set the example. And then he had the others, the families, they gave their gifts and they gave whatever they were gifted to do, whatever they were talented to do, whatever they had financially to do. He actually recorded. You know why we have all those names in Nehemiah? Nehemiah thought it was very important that all the names of the people that worked on the wall be recorded in the book of Nehemiah. It's also in the book of Ezra. That's important. And you know what? Next week, I want us to have a place, we'll have it in the bulletin. If you're here next week on that day that we start French Day, the day that we launch our third service, you're here on that weekend, not necessarily on Saturday night, but you're here on that weekend. I want to record that name because these are the people that went to the next level with us. These are the people that are moving on. And it's going to be a little different because some of the people you're looking around and you've always seen, they're going to be moved to a different service. But God's going to move some new people sitting next to you. And it's going to be so exciting because you've never seen them before. And you might ask, hey, let's go out and eat. And maybe some people you know in town, because this town's not that big. But God is opening new windows, new doors. He's opening a new way for all of us to look at this. We can get narrow and just stay small, or we can let God broaden us and we can grow in what God's doing. We can grow to being greatly used by God, but it will always, every time you grow, it feels awkward. It feels like a challenge. It feels like it's disorienting. And in so many different ways, you just feel that just everything's not the same. But actually, in a growing church, when everything becomes the same all the time, that's the death of that church. When everything's always familiar. We don't realize it, but if we do the same thing every Sunday, we never change, we sit in our same places, you know what, it don't appear that way to us because we're these good old people who've been here for all years. But you know when a new person comes in, you know what it feels like? It feels like a clique. It feels like, oh, I must have sat in their place because they're looking at me when they're, So next week, if you've been looking at a spot to sit and you never got to sit there, call somebody else. Next week might be your day to get it. Maybe your time to move into a new spot with God. But I'm excited with what God's doing. I pray. I told you last week, I asked you to pray for leadership. We had somebody come to my office this last week and said, God has laid on my heart to start a special prayer ministry for our leadership and for our church. I about was in tears because we so need that. We need people that will uplift our leadership because as we move up, there's more work to be done. There's more headaches. It's harder to manage 2 youth groups than it is 1. It's harder to manage 2 children's churches than 1. It's harder to manage 3 services than 1, and then another church in Chattanooga. But folks, if God's called us to it, He'll call and give us the grace to go through it. And we'll look back and we'll say, God has done a great work here. Because it's not my church, and it's not your church, it's God's church. And one day, as we grow older, it'll be so great to see another generation. You know, I looked last week and we had even, now I'm not saying the older Earl, but we had even a younger generation up here singing. I don't know about you, but it touched my heart because as they were singing, they were touched. We often think of the younger generation, they're the church of tomorrow. No, they're not. They're the church of today. This is their day. This is their church. Do we give them expression in this worship? Yeah, we should. Then we had a different group this Sunday, and it felt different. It felt refreshing. It felt good to me. And next week, we're going to have the whole stage full of just all kind of people singing up here. And I tell you, I think it's going to be a great time. I've invited people from Nashville, from Chattanooga. I've invited people. I'm hoping to set the example by having 8 or 10, 12 of my friends here next Saturday night for this Friends Weekend. You know, I have to call even out of town to get friends. You've got some friends. Maybe if none of your friends in town come, call for some out there. I know you got some friends. Let us go to the Lord in prayer at this time. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you today. God, I thank you for you have all kind of different people with different gifts and different talents and different abilities. Lord, what Paul could do, Barnabas couldn't do, but what Barnabas could do, Paul couldn't do. What Timothy and Titus and Crete and Epaphroditus, Lord, they had different skills and different ministries. Lord, there's surely a work that everybody in this church can do. Lord, the key to the city becoming a great and strong fortress of God, once again, was everybody did something. Everybody did a little bit. The leadership took the example in families, and then everyone began to give as they had. The time and the abilities. And Lord, I pray, Lord, for you to send the right leaders to this church, Lord, to take us to the next level. Lord, that we either grow with the growth of this church, Lord, or we move out of the way and let someone else do it. Lord, that you would bring to this church leadership of integrity. Lord, that you would bring to this church leadership of godliness. That you'd bring to this church, Lord, leadership of faithfulness. And Lord, I pray that I display those qualities in my own life. And God, I just pray today, if there be one here today that don't know you as their personal Savior, there could not be a greater thing that you can do in your life than ask Jesus Christ to come in your heart. Say, Jesus, please come in my heart and be my Lord and Savior today. In Jesus' name.